Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going a little meta. We're going to turn the lens around and actually break down the act of explaining itself. Okay, so here's the plan. We'll start with the surprising origin of the word explain. Then, we'll try to build a blueprint for the perfect scientific explanation. From there, we'll dive into how our brains are actually wired to understand things. And finally, we're going to stress test all of this against the chaos of one single very contradictory day.
All right, part one, the act of explaining. So what does it actually mean to explain something? I mean, the answer seems pretty obvious, right? But its real meaning is kind of buried in history.
Now, the modern dictionary definition is straightforward enough, to make things plain, to give a reason, but its ancient roots, well, they reveal a much more powerful and physical metaphor. That's right. To explain is to take a complex, wrinkled, uneven subject and literally smooth it out until it's plain and level. Think of it like smoothing out a crumpled piece of paper. It's a physical act of creating clarity. Keep that image in your head as we go. So now for part two, a blueprint for why. If we wanted to, say, engineer the perfect, most rigorous explanation possible, what would it actually look like? Well, for decades, philosophers of science had a blueprint for exactly that. It's called the deductive nomological model. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know, but the core idea is pretty simple. A perfect explanation is just a logical argument where the thing you're trying to explain is the absolutely unavoidable conclusion of a set of facts and universal laws. So, for an explanation to be scientifically perfect under this model, it has to meet four conditions. The conclusion has to follow logically, it's got to involve at least one law of nature, you have to be able to test it, and, well, the premises have to be true. You check all four of those boxes and bam, you've got a perfect explanation. But here's the thing. Sometimes this perfect little logic machine works flawlessly in reverse, and when it does, it produces answers that are completely, utterly absurd. And this example just illustrates the problem perfectly. Both of these statements are logically flawless, according to the model. The math works out. But we all instinctively know the second one is just wrong. A shadow doesn't cause a flagpole to exist. So a perfect logical explanation isn't always a good one, because it misses that one key ingredient, causation. Okay, part three, how our brains understand. So if perfect logic isn't the whole story, how do our brains actually process an explanation? Well, it turns out it's less about perfect logic and more about managing our very limited mental bandwidth. Our working memory is surprisingly small, and cognitive load theory basically says that a good explanation is just well-designed. It minimizes the extraneous load. That's all the junk like confusing jargon and distractions, so our brain has enough room for the germane load, which is the actual work of learning and understanding. And this is why learning hacks like the Feynman technique are so incredibly effective. They're not just clever tricks, they're basically real-world applications of cognitive load theory. Forcing yourself to explain something super simply strips away all the extra complexity and focuses on the core idea, which makes it way easier for any brain, including your own, to actually process it. All right, section 4, a world-demanding explanation. So we've got the theory, the metaphor of flattening, the logical blueprint, and the cognitive rules. Now, let's see what happens when we apply it all to the messy, complicated reality of a single day. On this one day, January 29th, 2026, the world is pulling in a million different directions. You've got the Trump administration on the brink of military action with Iran. In the US, a fatal shooting by federal agents is sparking massive outrage. And at the same time, the financial markets are telling two completely different, totally contradictory stories about what the future holds. Every single headline is demanding its own explanation. And right at the center of this storm, the killing of Alex Preddy, a VA nurse, becomes this national flashpoint. It's a perfect, really tragic demonstration of what happens when two different groups try to flatten the same chaotic event and end up with two completely different realities. So on one side, you have the official government account, a clear, simple story of self-defense. But on the other, you have video analysis that suggests a completely different and much darker sequence of events. Both are presented as the explanation, but they can't both be true. They're creating two starkly different surfaces from the exact same wrinkled moment. At the exact same time this human drama is unfolding, the financial world is offering its own set of competing explanations. On one hand, you've got the S&P 500 just blasting past 7,000. This is a story of incredible optimism, a clear explanation that the future, powered by AI, is looking brighter than ever. But on the other hand, the price of gold is also hitting all-time highs. And this tells a story of pure fear. Investors are explaining their view of the world by hedging against the exact same instability the stock market is ignoring: the situation with Iran, the political turmoil at home. So which is it? Is the future bright, or is it dangerously unstable? The market says, yes. Faced with all this chaos, what's culture's explanation for itself? Well, a viral meme emerges. 2026 is the new 2016. It's a search for comfort in something familiar. It's an attempt to explain this current unsettling feeling by mapping it onto a past that, in hindsight, feels lighter but chaotic. It's another act of flattening, of trying to smooth out a scary present with a known past. Okay, part 5, the limits of clarity. So where does this all leave us? We have this deep desire to make things plain. We have logical tools to build arguments, and we have the science to design for clarity. But what happens when reality itself is offering conflicting explanations? And this right here gets to the heart of it. A good explanation doesn't always provide a simple answer. Often, the very act of trying to flatten the subject is what reveals the deep fault lines in our shared understanding. The conflicting stories about Alex Preddy aren't a failure of explanation. They are what explanation reveals. From a flagpole's shadow to a fatal shooting to the global economy, we are just hardwired to seek a clear, simple, logical reason for things. But that desire is constantly running up against the complicated, contradictory, and often illogical nature of reality itself. And that brings us to our takeaway. We've seen that explaining began as this physical act, to make something flat. We've seen the perfect blueprint for doing it logically, and we know how to design explanations that actually fit the limits of our own brains. But the messy reality of a day like January 29th, 2026 shows that the world is rarely that simple. And this leaves us with one final big question. If our whole drive is to make things plain, what are we supposed to do when the truth isn't plain at all? Maybe the goal isn't just to find the one correct flat surface, but to understand the shape of the wrinkles themselves. And maybe that, navigating the complexity instead of erasing it, is the most honest explanation there is.